Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. My name is Claire Shorenstein, and I am a board-certified sports dietitian with 10 years of experience, as well as a long-time endurance athlete myself. I provide virtual nutrition services through my private practice, Eat for Endurance, and I host this podcast because I love sharing the nutrition stories of both professional and recreational athletes, and I also enjoy teaming up with sports nutrition colleagues to discuss a variety of important nutrition topics. So today, my fellow sports dietitian and ultra runner Julie Shobe returns to the show to chat all about her recent Zion 100-mile finish. Julie was actually on the show last summer to chat all about ultra marathon nutrition with me. That was episode 69, I believe, and I highly recommend that you go back and listen to that one in case you missed it. So I thought it would be fun if I'd bring Julie back on to talk about her race experience and specifically how her fueling plan played out. A large reason, why she wanted to do 100 was to have that personal experience for her client work, and she has many lessons and also funny stories to share. We also go off on a few tangents that you may be interested in, including the recent drama all about Spring Energy's awesome sauce, among many other things. So I hope you enjoy this episode and you find it useful, especially for those of you preparing for spring, summer, or even fall events. One last thing, I've had this podcast for nearly 5 years. In August, I think it'll be 5 years. And up until now, it has been completely unsponsored. I just want to give you a heads up that I have a sponsor for this episode. I am actively seeking regular sponsorship just to offset the countless hours of work that I pour into this show to prepare for and record, edit, publish, and promote these episodes, which are, of course, free for you guys. So there will be an ad mid-episode, and I really appreciate your support. All right, so without further ado, please enjoy my chat with Julie Shobe. Julie, welcome back to the Eat for Endurance podcast, and congrats on your Zion 100-miler finish. How is everything feeling today? How's the body recovering?
Thank you, Claire. Yes, I am feeling actually pretty good. I think I'm about 2 weeks out now, a little over. And I've just started to kind of like exert myself a little bit more. I just got back from the gym, so
nice.
Doing some more. I realized how much like strength I've lost, like because in the training block, the time spent running is just like so demanding for a 100-mile race. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot less strength training. I had a great base going in, but I was just talking to my sister who was on a 17-mile run training for one of her marathons. And I was like, yeah, I used to be able to do like 10 push-ups like on my toes, like pretty easily. And now I can only do 5. Like
Yeah, totally. Well, it's okay. You shifted your priorities, and now, well, I guess we'll be talking about, what you're up to now. But let's hit rewind for a second. I had you on the show more to talk about nutrition, since you're, of course, a sports dietitian like myself. And that was all the way back in July. I just realized July 2023. So just in case anyone hasn't, well, first of all, if anyone hasn't listened to the episode, I think it was episode 69, please go check that out. We talked all about ultramarathon nutrition, and it was awesome. But for anyone who maybe doesn't know you, just a super brief intro before we dive into all things Zion 100.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Julie Shobe. I've been a dietitian for over 14 years now, since 2010. And I worked about 10 years as a clinical dietitian specialized in diabetes education and got pretty burnt out there. Was actually really close to like quitting being a dietitian. But anyway, that's besides the point. So got inspired, been an ultra runner for a long time as well, same as my husband, and got inspired when we were at the Rut one year. And quite a few of our friends were running, and over half of them really struggled with like nausea and not being able to eat. And multiple of them didn't finish the race, or just finished like way slower than what they would have normally, because they're like very talented mountain athletes. So anyway, it got me thinking, and I was like, I think people need help figuring out how to fuel for these like long distance races that are, people want to push themselves. So it that then opened the door to my private practice, and now I've helped clients from all over the world run 100-mile races, run 200-mile races, and just really figure out what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, not only during training runs, but surrounding it, and supporting their training blocks as well. And it's been a really great journey seeing people succeed and really see like huge improvements to how they feel and race faster because their fueling is just that much more dialed and improved. So um, that gives you, does that give you a little bit
Yes,
of an
absolutely.
intro for
Perfect.
me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's great. And as I said, go check out our episode that we did that went through the ins and outs of ultramarathon fueling. A lot of people love that episode. You even said someone, and actually I heard someone else, I don't mean, I'm assuming this isn't the same person, be like, oh, I listened to this episode, and they told someone else, but you said someone said that they listened to the episode. And you're like, that was me. But
Yeah.
when we last chatted, you had said, I think the longest you had raced was 50 miles, or I forget, something like that.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if you were even like maybe you were contemplating 100, or I don't know what was going on, but it was definitely not in the plan yet. So why don't you talk us through a little bit about what led you to decide to run 100 and what kind of all that prep looked like? Because I mean, you also have two very young children. And we've talked about how demanding that is, obviously. And but yeah, why don't you kind of chat through that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question because I don't think it was on my radar
I don't think
when
so
we
either, if I
did.
remember
Yeah,
correctly.
no. And the words have absolutely come out of my mouth in the past. I will never run a 100 miler. Like I've literally said those words.
Same here. Maybe I'm next now.
Yeah. So I've learned my lesson. I like if I say I'm never going to do something, I like there's multiple things in my life where I've said I'm never going to do that, and then lo and behold, I end up doing it. So the reason why, so you're right. I have a daughter. She's 21 months, so she's not even two. She turns 2 in July. Um, and then I have a 6-year-old who's in kindergarten. So no, running a 100-mile race was not on my radar even back in July. I knew that training for a 50 miler was more doable, and I think that probably was on my radar when we were interviewing, and maybe I even signed up for it because that was in November.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like perspective becomes like so like warped when you're an ultra runner. Like 50 miles doesn't seem like that big of a deal to train for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized that that's not like the norm. But so, and I have a very supportive husband. Like he's also an ultra runner, so he understands the like time demand. And I have childcare, like half day childcare for my, less than 2-year-old, and then my other one is in kindergarten. So that is like a privilege that I have that
Mm-hmm.
I realize that helped me set aside the time to do this. But anyway, that's all it kind of rolls in that question because I have 2 young kids. But so I raced the 50 miler in November and was like, you know what? That wasn't that bad. Like my body recovered from it like so quickly, and my fueling went really well. And so then it was just kind of like, well, I could kind of dovetail off this 50 miler training and just keep going. There was another factor at play. My husband also wanted to run a 100 miler this year as well.
Mm.
So he was originally signed up for Crazy Mountain, which is in July. It's in Montana, and it's semi close to where we live. Anyway, so we had established that neither one of us wanted to be training for a 100 miler at the same time because we figured the
That would be
times,
rough. Yeah.
yeah, the demand that would take on both of us, and like just two hangry like parents, and
Yeah.
it didn't sound like a good combo. So what I did, like I got on the internet and was just kind of like scouring. I love Utah. Like I've always been drawn to Utah. So then I was like, oh, there's this like 100 miler in Zion in April. I would have to train over the winter, which that was a whole like thing. I was very grateful. We had a very mild winter here in Montana, so I was able to like run trails pretty much the whole time with like
nice.
spikes
Yeah.
on, of course. But
Yeah.
there was only like 2 or 3 weeks where it got like a proper winter and it was like negative degrees, and I did a lot of treadmill those weeks. But anyway, so that was part of the reason why I timed it the way I did, was because was like, oh, well, I have this training, I could kind of dovetail off of that and then do an early spring one, and then Justin could do a 100-miler later in the year. So that was part of it. Another part of it was the work I do. I mean, I can like confidently say I've helped hundreds of ultra runners. I've had over 100 people come through my program, and I've had thousands of followers on Instagram, and lots of people reach out and say like, hey, your advice has helped me run 100 miles. So I can confidently say I have like helped and supported many people achieve this goal. And so also in my head, I did say to people, I think I have like an inflated sense of self-confidence that I'm going to be able to do this 100-miler. Like,
yeah, it's a totally different story when you're doing it for yourself versus like helping someone else do something, right?
Yeah, because it's like, oh, I've helped all these people, and like from all different like walks of life and different like physical abilities, and you're like, whoa, cool, if you can run 100 miles, then surely I can run 100 miles. So there was like part of that. So just being like inspired by others that I've worked with. And then, I would say the biggest motivator was like, I want to do this so I can have like that personal experience. I know, like, so I can actually really know what it's like at mile 88, and like, and really, I can relate to people when they say, oh, I just like can't eat, or I felt nauseous, or, insert fueling issue here.
Sure.
So like, I wanted to be able to like replicate what people tell me about, and then be like able to actually like, yeah, I understand. I've been there. I've done that. And also put my fueling method to the test too, right? Like I've had a lot of people do it themselves and it works really well. And then it was like, oh, I kind of want to, like, I want to do this for my own self and see, does this actually play out at mile 88 the way I think it's going to play out? So, yeah, there were, some motivating factors there. And it's just like, I really enjoy pushing myself physically. I really enjoy pushing myself mentally. And that definitely did that. So yeah.
Yeah. I think the personal experience piece is like, I mean, I know for me, it would probably be the biggest one, because when I work with clients, when I'm working with people where I've done something similar, it just makes it so easy. See, I love when dietitians have snacks on my show. Like this, see, you're following your advice. Like, go for it. Awesome. Love it.
Perfect bar.
If you hear the wrinkling of a wrapper, that's what it is. But being able to just be like, yeah, I get what that's like is so huge. And not to say that you have to, like, of course you don't have to do everything your clients are doing, not to mention that everyone's experience is different. So even if you do a 100-miler or a 50-miler or a marathon or a 10K, whatever it is, right? Even if you've done those things, it doesn't mean that their experience is going to be the same. Of course it's not. They're a different person, right? And different things work for them. But it's still, I think from my own experiences, it's been really helpful. I mean, I work with all kinds of athletes, but I think there's a reason why a lot of my athletes are runners, So like, obviously they're drawn to the fact that I myself am an endurance runner, and it's helpful. It's nice. It's that relatability is nice. But anywho, awesome. Okay. So like Zion also, by the way, is a place I've always wanted to go. Have I been to Utah? No, I've not been to Utah at all. So yeah, lots of things that I definitely want to see. I've eyed that race, the shorter distances, because I'm still in that, like, I'm never going to run 100-mile kind of mindset.
Yeah.
We'll see if that sticks. I think we were bonding over, when we were chatting offline after recording, we were bonding over not wanting to run at night. I know you had pacers, you had a crew, like, so maybe that's kind of what got you through. Did you train at night at all? Like, were you practicing that? You were? Who would you run with? Would you run with friends, or how did that work?
Yeah. So running at night ended up being some of my favorite miles of the race.
Okay.
I like, and I was actually talking to another racer. So when it gets dark, the bummer is, right, you don't have the scenery.
Sure.
but it like kind of calmed my senses. It's like you don't have all of these other distractions, and you
Mm.
can just, it's really peaceful, and you just like focus on the task at hand, which is just moving forward. And then I also got really great advice from a friend I've paced during her 100 miler, and I think no, I think it just solely came from her. She was like, take a few moments and like turn off your headlamp, turn off your lights, and just look up at the stars. And we did that. And that is just like a really magical experience when you just take a few moments and you're just like, wow, this is the beauty of the nighttime, right? So there was part of that where it was just like actually really calming to my like nervous system to be running
Mm.
at night. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me it does. And then so yeah, so I actually really enjoyed running at night. I did practice once. I wasn't super worried about running at night because I had paced, so I've paced my husband multiple times during his 100 milers, and most of the time it's at night.
Oh,
Um,
okay. So you had some experience there.
so I had some experience there and in like a race scenario. And then that
Hmm.
friend who told me to turn off my light, I picked her up at Crazy Mountain last summer. I want to say at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And so like, I have experience. I feel like confident in my ability
Got
to
it.
run it. And I know what it's like in a race scenario. Like
Hmm.
it's, yeah, it's, so I wasn't super nervous. I did practice one time on my training block because I got a waist lamp instead of a headlamp.
Oh, interesting.
Um, so it worked. So I have a really small, I have like a child-sized head. So my head is like super small.
Uh-huh.
And when I wear headlamps, I like literally have to cinch them so tight that it gives me a headache.
Like a
So
headache?
anyway,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
uh-huh. So these waist lamps, plus they give like really good light.
Hmm.
So anyway, so I wanted to, my main reason was I wanted to practice wearing that waist lamp and see how annoying it was going to be, if it was going to be annoying or not. And so the night that I practiced, I had one friend. I reached out to her and I was like, "Hey, this sounds really crazy, but would you like be willing to go like run an evening run with me?" And we ran, it was a 2 hour run. It was only 10 miles. So we ran the first like 45 minutes where it was still like light slash dusk out. And
Hmm.
then the last like hour and a half was in the dark. So, which was also good to kind of like experience
Sure.
the
Sure.
light fading. And the night that I did it was actually a blizzard.
Oh God.
So that was the worst part of that night, was the drive home from the trailhead that we were at. But otherwise it was a great. So and that was also a really good experience. And it's something I do encourage my clients to do too, at least try some night run or early
Hmm.
morning or something, so you
Hmm.
get like what it feels like to be running in the dark. But also what it's like to be fueling in the dark.
That was me, my next question. Yeah. Because that's a whole different experience when your body's just not really used to taking on food during those times. Right?
Totally. And
So what was that like for you?
yeah, I underestimated how difficult it would be for me,
Mm.
specifically in the hours between like 1 a.m. to like 4 a.m.,
Hmm.
5 a.m. ish, where your circadian rhythm is just like really not like, you're
Yeah.
never awake during this time. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? um, so I had a little bit of prep from that training run that I did do. I was like, oh, I need to, and these are all things I tell my clients, but like
Of
you just
course.
have to,
It's
you have to
it's
learn them for yourself.
different. It's different when you like are
It's
trying to follow your own advice. I mean, that goes for
totally,
like everything. It's not just
yeah,
like fueling. It's just like even everyday stuff. As I
totally,
tell myself every day, I'm like, I need to follow my own advice. Yeah, totally
totally.
different story.
So it was like, it was a realization on that training run I did with my friend in this
Mhm.
training block, was like, oh, I need to rely way more on liquids in the nighttime. So I did plan that, and I do think that that helped save me. Um, yeah, to get real with you, and I, from miles like 70 to 90, I did a pretty crap job of fueling myself. Um, I had the things on me. I had the proper foods, that would have been easy to consume in the nighttime. but it was hard. It was really hard to to drink and eat in the night. And the temp
But
dropped, so it got a little bit colder
Yeah.
too, which is always like harder to eat when you're,
mhm.
you have gloves on now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Was it like a nausea thing or just like I'm just too tired and lack of appetite kind of situation?
Yeah, so I never experienced any nausea.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, which I was like, woohoo! I was like very,
Yeah.
very happy about that.
Yeah.
So never had nausea. The only time I got close to throwing up was around the 90-mile mark. My pacer gave me a pancake from an aid station, and I just tried to like throw it back like too quick. So I didn't chew it up good enough. So it just like very much so triggered a gag reflex.
Okay.
And like full
More mechanical failure.
like full stop, like
Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
dry heaving.
God.
But I was
Oh my
able to
God.
get it down. And my pacer, she was so funny. She like was holding up the second pancake, and she was like, "So that's a no." I was like, "Yeah, no."
Oh my God. That's great.
So I didn't have any nausea, no throwing up, which I felt very grateful for, and also was like, okay, so like, my fueling method did really well for me there. The biggest thing I struggled with was the lack of appetite, not being like just your body's just not used to eating in those hours. So it was just like an aversion to, and you're just like fatigued. And you're a dietitian and you don't mind talking about poop, and people who listen to this also don't mind talking about poop. But I ended up, so the thing that I did deal with that did slow me down was I ended up having to poop 7 times.
Oh dear. Okay.
So, and I've like, as your dietitian brain, I'm like, okay, so what caused this? I have a few theories. And I knew this going into it. I fuel with a lot of fruit. Because it goes, I like the fresh taste. I like the flavor of it. Fresh fruit and like Spring Energy and Noka smoothies.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of products that have fruit in them.
Yeah.
And like honey stingers have fructose sugar in them too. So like there's, just like a lot of fructose, and that's a well-known thing. It's established in research that like fructose can cause GI problems. And it like, so I knew that going into it. I was like, oh, this is pretty like fructose heavy, but I'm just going to go with it because these are foods I know that I fuel with well. So that was one thing that I think I'm a nervous pooper. So, and like my body was on full stress, right? Like all race day. So
I'm sure.
Yeah. So I think that also played a role, just like a massive influx of food too, right? So like you're just, and that's part of the digestive process is pooping. So my normal poop schedule is usually anywhere between like 1 and 3 poops a day. So it was like definitely an influx of that. But if like you consider, okay, all of this additional food, like that's actually kind of adds up. I had caffeine sprinkled throughout the race too. Like I had some in the morning, and then I started it back up in the evening.
Night,
that can be a trigger for me.
Yep.
So there's just like, so there's a lot of things where you look at it and it's like, well, could I have done some things differently? Yeah, I'm sure I could have cut back on the amount of fructose that I had, but also I'm sure I still probably would have had to poop a decent amount, just considering the massive amount of food you have to eat. So,
and it was also, you were out there for more than 24 hours anyways. It wasn't just a day. Weren't you out there for 30 something? I forget.
I was out there I just like laugh when I say it. I finished in 31 hours and 29 minutes. It's like such a long time.
Who cares? You did it. Like whatever. You weren't out there winning records. You were out there to finish and to have that experience.
Yeah.
So like, who cares, right?
Totally.
But no, I hear you. But you're out there a really long time. So let's like backtrack a second. I think it'd be really interesting, because in our last episode, we went through all the things of like how to train for an ultra and ultramarathon nutrition. And like, we broke it all down. And I think it'd be really interesting to talk about, what your plan was and then like kind of how it played out. I know we already kind of touched on parts of it, but maybe looking at it more as like globally what your plan was, and
Yeah.
how you kind of approached it. I don't know if you were like what your training plan, how that was laid out, if you did it yourself working with a coach or like all that, but I don't know, whatever relevant details you want to throw in there. But yeah, kind of how you created your own plan. I know that you were saying you're kind of putting your own feeling plan strategies to the test. So it would be great to hear like a little bit more about like globally what that looked like.
Yeah, definitely. So, are you asking about like training running wise or fueling or both combined?
Let's start with the like specifically during runs, like kind of the intra workout stuff. For actually, yeah, let's do the race first. Like what your plan was, how you kind of built that plan. So I guess you practiced that in kind of training. So how you kind of got to the point where you were able to build that specific race day plan for yourself. Let's start there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I use all my clients get it. It's like a really awesome Google Sheets document that does math for you and all this like fun
Yeah,
stuff.
sure.
So so yeah, I start, and it's super easy for me to put fuel plans together for other people. But like when it comes to yourself, it's like, whoo, you gotta think like a little bit more. Um, so yeah, what I do is I start with like a list of foods that I tend to fuel with and that I know I like, and then I look at the race and I estimate how much time a certain section is going to take me, and then I plug in foods accordingly. And then I take into consideration the terrain and the time of day. Like, so like at my like 50, I knew that was going to be around dinner time. So I had my husband get me a Jimmy John's sandwich. I ate Jimmy
Mm-hmm.
John's for dinner, and that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's kind of globally, I look at big picture, but yeah, so how do I like simplify all of this? So take the list of foods that I tend to fuel with. I know foods that I like to start a race off with that I know go down really easily, especially if I have nerves going on. So I, practiced I put those in for early on in the race. I looked at where there were drop bags, and pretty much like every 10-ish miles or so is where I could have a drop bag. Some drop bags were more frequent and I didn't use those locations. But yeah, so then I just established, okay, so this section here, I want to eat this. I put it in a little plastic bag, labeled it, and then did that basically for the whole entire race. And then there were some sections that were in drop bags waiting for me. There were some sections that were with my husband because he was the crew master. So and we looked at the race ahead of time, and also established when I wanted to brush my teeth and when I wanted to get a change of shoes and when I wanted to get a change of clothes, and when we were going to switch out the batteries to my waist lamp so I didn't have to worry about that dying. And so there's a lot of logistics there. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah,
It's still
that's
really
kind of like the
big.
10,000-foot view, and then we're gonna like zoom in a little bit. But
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, so, and that's kind of the general strategy you take with your clients, where you're kind of breaking down different segments of like, okay, in this first, however many miles, you're going to do these foods, and then you're going to do those foods. How do you handle when, let's say you planned XYZ foods and you get to that point you don't want any of those things? What do you do about that?
Yeah.
And did you hit that point? I mean, I know you hit the point where you didn't want literally anything, but
Yeah.
when you plan out where's the flexibility? How do you account for like wanting or needing flexibility?
Yeah, and this is a question I get from my clients all the time. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so we do the best we can on predicting what types of food you're going to want when, right? And we base that based off of your training. Um, and we don't always eat everything that we pack, and that's totally fine. I definitely did not eat everything that I packed, and that was totally fine. That's when you get like, okay, you have aid stations
Yeah.
available. Most races have aid stations available unless you're doing something crazy. That doesn't, you have to support yourself. And that's when at the aid stations you say, okay, so I didn't eat this. I know I'm in a deficit here. What at the aid station can I swap out for this? For me, it was heavily potatoes. Um, they had little baby russet potatoes, and I ate
Mm-hmm.
so many of those. I loved those. I preferred if they were hot, but sometimes they were cold, and I'd still eat them. Um, just like such a nice, like bland, starchy, right? Not sweet, not sugar based food. So for me, that was what I knew I would have to replace if I didn't eat something out of my bag. Um, and let's see here. There was one section in the middle of the night where I thought I was gonna love this. Like NAC has this salty drink. It's like a broth-based drink, and I had
Mm-hmm.
practiced with it. I thought I was gonna love it. Um, excuse me, and it was just like I think I drank like a third of it, and I was like, wow, this is and this is like a very efficient fuel source. Like this was not a good one to not consume, right? Like because a serving is 55 grams of carb, 8 grams of protein, and 800 milligrams of sodium. So
Oh, nice. Yeah.
it's like this
Oops.
is yeah, this is one where it's like I should not be skipping out on this. This is
Yeah.
like a very efficient, and I gave myself like 3 hours to consume it, and so I knew that I was behind on that one, and part of oh, it's like almost it's sometimes worse when you like are a dietitian and you know all of these things, so
Oh, of
then you like
course.
really get
It's
in
so
your
bad.
head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Then the imposter syndrome comes and you're like, I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about anything. Yeah, no, I hear you. But you know what? There's
Yeah.
like almost this expectation, and I had this in my so I recently I took a while off racing and I did a 35K with a lot of climbing and was kind of just having a good day out, whatever. But I like my last two races have experienced almost this like what feels like almost like a colon spasm. I don't know what's going on like before the race. And my friend I ran it with, who's a doctor, was like, I think that's like your pelvic floor or something. I don't know what's going on, but I like had these like crazy, like occasional like GI things, or like, or at a, like, I think there's this thought that it's like, okay, if you can't master, like perfect your own nutrition, that somehow you're like lesser than as a dietitian. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's kind of BS, right? Like we're all just
it
human
is.
beings, like figuring
We're
it
all
out.
just humans.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So I feel you that I feel like it was not perfect, but it was okay. But you know, again, I think as you were saying, just having these experiences and being able to relate, but also being able to show that you can get through them and still
Yeah.
finish the task. Today's episode is sponsored by Currans, a capsule-based supplement made from New Zealand black currants. It's Informed Sport certified and backed by over 50 published research studies, and I mention that because I wouldn't collaborate with a supplement that wasn't third-party tested or supported by science. Currants helps the body to cope with the physical stress of training with 3 times faster recovery and half the muscle soreness. This is a huge benefit when you're training most days, and especially if you're preparing for an endurance event. One of my ultra runner clients recently sampled the product while ramping up his training volume and told me he felt a lot less sore while using it. And my husband also tried some free samples before and during his ultra and felt way better than expected during the 2 days after his race. Another potential benefit to taking Currants is that it can help prevent GI issues while training and racing in the heat. Obviously, there are so many different factors at play when it comes to the gut during exercise, but a recent study came out showing that Currants helped prevent GI distress among runners in hot conditions. We must always prioritize nutrition, sleep, and stress management, among other things, when it comes to improving both health and performance. But I do think certain athletes would benefit from this polyphenol-rich supplement. Plus, studies have not shown any negative side effects of taking it, and Currants is so confident in their product that you'll get your money back if you don't experience the recovery benefits after taking it. Use code E for Endurance to get 20% off your first pack of capsules. That's E, not EAT. And you can also visit the show notes for more info. All right, back to the episode. I'm curious. So I was going to ask if anything kind of surprised you about your nutrition. So the NAC thing seems to be like one of those things that you thought you were going to love and you ended up not loving. Were any other foods or products that either surprised you that you didn't like or ended up liking or didn't think you'd use, or did everything else kind of turn out the way you expected?
Yeah, that's a good question. There were a couple things. So the knack thing was a real disappointment because I was like,
Yeah.
dude, I really thought I was gonna love this.
Yeah.
And this is a lot to have to like replace.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a surprise. I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich right around the 26-mile mark, which was at a aid station where crew was at. And I was pretty excited about that sandwich, and I think I ate like a fourth of it, just because it was like, I don't know, it was like smushed, rightfully, like just
Sure.
because of all the
Yeah.
packing and
Yeah.
all the things
Yeah.
that was in.
Yeah.
No, not complaining about anything, but it was just like, oh, bummer. Like I wish I could have just like powered through and eaten more of that.
Yeah.
I still ate some of it, but not as much as I wish I would have. And I've eaten peanut butter and jelly sandwiches millions of times on runs, so that one was like, oh, why is this one so hard to eat? Another thing that was kind of frustrating. The Jimmy John's tasted amazing. That was awesome.
Yeah.
The only mistake I made with that was I told my husband for them to not put tomatoes on it, because tomatoes can make it like mushy and gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it's like made too far in advance.
Sure.
And I wish I would have told him to put them on the side so I could put them on there, because it would have made eating that sandwich just like a little bit more juicier and easier, a little bit more moisture. So that was like a mistake there that I wish I would have done a little bit differently. But otherwise, that Jimmy John sandwich was amazing, and I was so happy that there was a Jimmy John's. I Googled. I was like, there's one super close to this aid station. Yeah, the logistics of this race were awesome too, by the way. And I realized that not all races could support a Jimmy John sandwich.
Yeah, sure.
So that worked out really well. Another thing that was surprising that I kind of knew was going to happen, but I also wasn't sure how it was going to play out was, and this was my husband telling me this, once you've hit that point of like, just like this lack of appetite, and really foods are hard to chew and swallow, it's just hard to get things down. That's going to happen like probably mile 80 and after, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had like a full-on complete like mental breakdown at like mile 87. And that was like an accumulation of just being like exhausted. I was out there for much longer than I thought I was going to be out there for. I had a half marathon left. Wasn't moving too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I was behind on fueling, right? Like my fueling really kind of went in the tank right around mile 70. So that was like hours of me not doing well with eating a fraction of what I should have been eating.
Yeah.
And I'll tell this story, and it will come back to your original question of what was surprising to me. So I ended up, my pacer and I, both our watches started beeping that we were off course. And at this point in time, both of us were like, you gotta be kidding me. This is like, we are not off course. So my pacer was like, keep going. We can't be off course. Like, we have to be on the right thing. But I am going to run back and double check that we didn't miss like a turn. So she left me. I looked at my phone. I was like not in a great place mentally. Like I said, this is like mile 87-ish somewhere. And I looked at my phone. I had cell phone service, and I called my husband. And because my husband's run 4 100-milers. Yeah. And he did amazing, by the way. And he was not nice to me on this phone call. And he is never mean to me. He is like the most kind human you will ever meet. He's like so fantastic. But anyway, so I got on the call, and I'm crying. And he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm moving so slow. And he's like, yeah, I'm moving so slow. And he's like, what hurts? And I was like, my feet hurt a little bit. And he was like, your feet hurt a little? Like totally condescending. And I was like, he's like, they're supposed to hurt a little. And I was like, okay. He's like, what have you been eating? And I was like, not nearly as much as I should be. And he was like, Julie, you know this. This is what you do. You have to eat. You're going to save yourself hours out in the sun if you can start eating. And then you're going to be able to move more and you're going to be able to think better. Because I also had told him, like, my head's super fuzzy. I can't think straight. And he's like, well, you haven't been eating. That's why. Like, this is what you do for a living. And then he was very kind. He said, Julie, you're going to finish. You have plenty of time to finish. He's like, no one cares what time you get. You're just going to go faster if you can eat. So, like, I got off the phone. My pacer came back. She's like, there's no way we're off trail. Like, we are on the right trail. And I looked at her and I was like, I'm ready. We're going to go. I was like, I had like a full mental breakdown, and you're helping me get out of it. Justin's helping me get out of it.
Yeah.
And so, in those last 13 miles, it really came down to electrolyte beverage, recovery beverage, and gels. Like at least
basics.
For me.
Yeah.
It was just like goo gels, like the thing that everyone hates and like complains about.
Yeah.
But really, it's like these are very simple carbohydrates. They're gonna perk me up fast. And that's exactly what they did. They're small, they're efficient. So I feel like gels get a bad rap in the running community, but it is what helped me in that last 13 miles to like get out of my funk, get my nutrition back on track. And they're easy to pack. And I had those on hand. That's what I did.
Always include gels in plans for long races because they're so key in just filling those gaps, whether, at various points, and
they're very efficient.
Yeah. I think I've had like one ultra runner who didn't do gels, who did food and like liquid calorie. Like he was doing a lot of sports drink and didn't do the gels, but most people I've worked with have gels at some point, or chews, or whatever it is.
It all works together. Yeah.
It does, definitely. So when you're talking about like the lineup of the simple foods in that first chunk of a race, what is that for you? Like you're saying in the beginning when you're kind of nervous and you have like the things that you're starting your race with, what are those products for you?
Yeah, so they're also very sports-based fuel. I love honey stingers. I think they're super they're super easy for me to eat.
The gels or the chews?
The actual energy chews.
Oh, the chews. Okay.
Yep. So I just eat a couple at a time and get through a pack in probably anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. And they're 38 grams of carb or 39 grams of carb in there. It's great, efficient. It's like the equivalent of close to 2 gels, right? So I like those. Awesome sauce. I really like that as well. 45 grams of carb in there.
Although we'll talk about it in a second. We got to talk about the drama. We need to talk about. Wait, let's finish this question, then we'll circle back to the drama.
Yeah,
the spring energy drama.
I'd like to have your take on that, but I'm just like,
okay, let's answer this question
first. True. It can't be true. Anyway, so anyway, I think I like awesome sauce.
I use it too.
I go with 45 grams of carb. It's very efficient fuel source. So, electrolyte beverage, and then I always start off with pretty early on a recovery beverage as well.
Which do you use? Which brands do you use for those?
I use the Scratch Vegan Recovery. I like the nutrition profile of that is better than their normal recovery. Plus, I don't do well with dairy products, so that works better for me. So,
what do you do for electrolytes?
So Scratch Hydration.
Oh, the Scratch Hydration.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
And sometimes I'll mix. So sometimes I'll do a scoop. Sometimes I'll do a scoop and a half of the Scratch Hydration, and sometimes I'll do 1 scoop of Scratch Hydration and 2 scoops of Scratch High Carb. And I did that strategically later in the race, a couple times. So because that was closer to 50 grams of carb when you do that, and I think like roughly 500 milligrams of sodium. So just a little bit more efficient way to get fuel in there. So yeah, and I had that all very organized ahead of time and planned out. But yeah, so that's what I those are the foods that I oftentimes have. Also a Noka smoothie. So see how there's like lots of fruit in there.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
and then those waffles. I don't know if I say them right. Waffles.
I haven't
It's like
tried those. I've
like
heard of them.
they are awesome. They are like a decent, they're pretty dense. So it's like you have to work hard to get through them, but it's like 50 grams of carb roughly. I might be slightly off there, 50 or 55. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think 5 grams of protein. So like a little bit of protein in there too. And I will top them with awesome sauce and kind of eat them that way so they're a little bit easier to chew. So I did
Oh, so it's not so dry, you mean?
not so dry and
Yeah.
dense. Hmm.
Yeah.
So did that. Yeah. Those were a lot of the foods that I had early on. And then I start eating the aid station potatoes pretty early on too.
Is that your
And
main like
potato
salty
chips.
thing? So those are your main salt stuff?
My main sodium comes from scratch
Oh
or
no,
like
I meant salty foods, like just taste wise.
oh yeah, taste wise, yes. The potatoes or potato chips are what I do. I tried to like the quesadillas along the course because I was excited about quesadillas. I'm a bit of a snot. Like we make really good quesadillas at home, and
Yeah.
I like was like, oh no, these are not the tortillas that I like. So
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, you did not partake.
I did not. I tried. I was like, come on, Julie, because these are like awesome. But
Yeah.
I couldn't do the quesadillas on the course.
Yeah.
Which was fine. I mean, had I been like really like, in trouble, I would have downed them.
Yeah.
But I didn't need. I had other options. So
Yeah. All right. So awesome sauce. I honestly, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I haven't like dug into like deep into the science of it, and I'm not a scientist. Like, I mean, I don't know. I definitely use the gels. I also use precision products. And like, oh, I mean, well, actually, okay, I have a question for you, but I'm gonna park that for a minute. I mean, I use all kinds of things interchangeably, and I'm not noticing like a huge energy difference personally. Like, I'm not like noticing suddenly I'm like plummeting in my energy levels or anything. So, I mean, I don't know. I will say that I've always been kind of curious about like, how is this 45 grams? It's not that big. And it definitely has changed in taste and texture over the years. I've definitely have noticed that.
I've noticed that too.
And then there's like prominent people, like I don't know, like I know like David Roche was somehow involved, and they've like I mean, there's all this like, supposed stuff going on. So I don't have any, like, to be honest, I don't have any hot takes or strong opinions on this. I'm just kind of sitting on the sidelines being like, what's going on? So I don't know what your opinion or what your thoughts on. You seem to think it's not true that it is indeed potentially 45 grams of carbs, but I don't know.
Yeah. Should we clarify? So there's a Reddit thread.
Oh yeah, sorry. I should probably say something about that.
There's a Reddit thread that somebody wrote that they did some kind of food experiment, and honestly, I didn't read specifically what they did. I think they boiled it down and got it.
I don't know.
And did some math that showed that this person is claiming that it was only roughly, I think, 16 grams of carbohydrates.
Like more on the level of the rest of their gels.
Yeah, right. I have one. I'm gonna go over here just a sec.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you that the taste and texture of awesome sauce has absolutely changed. Not for the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. It's gotten like more liquidy,
way more liquidy,
and less applesauce tasting. I don't know.
Yes. So the ingredients in here are basmati rice, applesauce, apple juice, yams, maple syrup, lemon juice, vanilla, sea salt, cinnamon. Okay, so lemon juice, sea salt, vanilla, cinnamon aren't going to be carbohydrates, right?
Yeah.
But we've got rice, applesauce, apple juice, yams, maple syrup are all very highly concentrated carbohydrate sources. So, I was curious when I read that Reddit thread. It says the serving size is 54 grams. So what I wanted to do was I took my pack and put it on a food scale, and it only read at 52 grams. So I was like, all right, they're 2 grams shy. of what they're
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
should be in here.
Yeah.
But that's not going to lead to a third of a difference in the nutrition label. Plus, I mean, this is a food that has to go through regulation processes
Well,
through,
that's why I was really confused by all of this. I mean, there's always obviously there's a chance that this thing's off, but I think the big thing to note is this is not a supplement. So supplements are
correct.
treated very differently. This is a food.
This
So
is a food.
gels have to be regulated as a food, and there are
Yep.
very strict rules surrounding that. That does not mean that this isn't wrong or there isn't a mistake. Like,
Right.
to be perfectly honest, I don't know the specific testing procedures that this gel would have had to have gone through, but
Yeah, same.
in theory, it should be more regulated, or it is very regulated compared to, say, a supplement, which is not. And that's why we always recommend third-party tested things versus just the random thing you get off Amazon, which can contain God knows what.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know what the answer is. To my knowledge, I mean, granted, I've been following it as closely. I don't know if Spring has issued a statement at this point.
I know. I haven't
Have you seen?
anything.
I haven't seen. We're talking on April 25th.
Yeah.
By the time this comes out, God knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But this has been the latest drama in the sports nutrition world, and I'm kind of curious where it will lead. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I think the price point of Spring is just so absurd, and it's really, it's just very, very, very high. So I don't get any special discount as a dietitian, so it's a lot. It's a lot to spend on a product. So that's the main reason why I probably would stop. I also really hate their marketing language. There's a lot of like, we're better than you, like, like we have real
marketing
food.
Language for all food is like driving me nuts these days.
Yeah, for reals. But like for Spring, it's very like, we're so much better than you because we use real food. And it's like, screw you. Like, come on, like, whatever, like, get over it. It's like sugar's fine.
The other stuff isn't fake food. Come on.
Yeah, well, it's just like it serves a very specific purpose. Like people hopefully aren't sitting around like shooting goose on their couch, like, whatever. Anyways, I think that's enough on Spring. We don't need to give this more airtime, but since it came up, I was like, we got to talk about it.
Well,
and
to also put like applesauce, apple juice, maple syrup are all just sugar labeled in a different wording, right? Like it's basically what it is. So anyway, so I don't think that their nutrition labeling can be that far off. I think that's absurd.
Maybe it's a little off. I don't know if it's that far off.
Right. Yeah, same.
I don't know.
Okay,
so,
back to regular.
Yeah. So what were your, like, did you have very specific targets for carbs per hour, protein per hour, sodium per hour, fluid per hour? What were those for you?
My goal was to be consistently 60 grams of carb an hour, if not a little bit more. Early on in the race, that's another thing I try and encourage people to do, is if you can eat more earlier on in the race, that's going to help you overcome that lack of appetite. And I do think I was able to do that. And I also am the more I think about it, I was pretty easily able to get myself out of that low. And I really do think it's because of how well of a job I had done earlier on in the race and fueling. So I wasn't like super, super deep in the hole. If that makes sense. I was in the hole, but not like that bad.
Yeah.
So 60 grams of carb an hour, an average throughout the race. Definitely was not hitting that between mile 70 and 90. Like, I was probably, I haven't even looked back. It's on my list of things to do to like estimate how much I got and see if I can recall the foods that I was eating at the aid stations and whatnot. But if I were to guess, it was probably roughly a third to maybe a half of what I should have been eating. For a decent chunk of time. And then 5 grams of protein an hour is what I usually do pretty well with. And most of that is coming from like a recovery beverage of some, for me, it's the Scratch Vegan Recovery, or the NAC products have protein in them as well. So like a liquid based protein, or the Jimmy John sandwich or the waffles I was talking about, foods
Mm-hmm.
like that. Noka smoothies have 5 grams of protein in
Yeah.
them too. So from a variety of different sources. Um, and then sodium, I try and replace my sodium roughly around 500 milligrams of sodium an hour. I tend to do pretty well with that. Um, there was a point in time where I started peeing more frequently. Um, and so then I had this thought of like, oh, am I behind on sodium? Because right, like our body will lower our fluid amount to match the dropped sodium,
Mm-hmm.
the hyponatremia that
Yeah.
occurs.
Yeah.
So I never got like sausage fingers. I never, which I was surprised by because I'll get those,
Yeah.
and that's just like part of a natural response. Sometimes it's not even related to
Oh,
hydration,
I
right?
got like well, yeah, I think it's just from the running and like having your hands kind of down the
Yeah,
motion. Like, I mean, even just running for what 4.5 hours, like I like my rings were just like, my
yeah,
fingers were totally swollen.
yeah. So that was kind of tricky. I didn't overthink it though, because that was one of the things where I was like, oh man, I think I know too much in this scenario.
Yeah.
Could like really get into a rabbit hole
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Totally.
like trying to like overcompensate or fix
Yeah.
this. But
Hmm.
part of it was that happened at the end of the day when the sun went down.
Yeah.
Um, and I had just like downed like a big water bottle just of pure water. So,
Hmm.
because that's also tasted really good to me at that point in time where I was like, oh, I just need like plain water.
Yeah.
So then I thought, oh, that could have just been my body, filtering out that just like big water bottle of plain water that you just drank.
Yeah.
Um, so I try not to overthink that. Otherwise, I think at the end of the race, I was very swollen. Like my feet and my ankles and my legs were even like my calves were pretty swollen. And I've spent a decent amount of time like thinking about that too. Like, could that have been related to my hydration and my sodium replacement, or is that just like my body's natural response to 31 hours and 29 minutes of pounding and running? So,
Yeah.
um, but otherwise, I mean, post race, like within those 48 hours of recovery, my digestive system was totally fine. My appetite was fine. My kid, like I was
That's
peeing
great.
like very normally.
Yeah.
Um, so so my overall consensus is like, I think I did a fairly good job of replacing my sodium and my hydration needs. And because of how I recovered.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the swelling could have been related to,
Hmm.
the hydration, but I think it was mostly just the pure volume
Yeah.
of how long you're out there for.
Did you
So,
take any, like, aside from the sport products and the foods, did you take any supplements kind of in preparation for, during, or after the event?
oh, that's a great question. And this is a good opportunity for me to shout out uh, New Zealand currants.
Oh my
So,
God. I like, that's so funny. This podcast is probably going to be sponsored by them.
oh, really?
Well, in this episode, yeah, that's so funny. Like, literally, I just got samples of their stuff to try. I haven't tried it
Yeah.
yet, but yeah.
Yeah, so they're so great. And so it's New Zealand currants, right? That's the
I don't
name.
know if it's Currens or Currenzy. I'm not sure how you say it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I'm not either. So, okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
We're in the early stages of talking. So.
Yes. So we should chat about that. So that's good. Yeah. So they sent me free samples, which was very kind of them to
Yeah.
do that. And I was fairly diligent about supplementing the weeks leading up because I had enough to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I took my very last one the morning of.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's some research that they have that shows, it helps with fat oxidization, so utilizing your fat
Yeah.
stores for energy better. And then improved recovery, I think, is their other big benefit that they promote for ultra runners.
Yeah.
So I did take those. Partly because I want to try it out and see. I didn't see any negative benefits to taking it. And my recovery did go very well, I think, for a 100-mile race.
Yeah.
I think there's
Awesome.
multiple different factors. Like I wouldn't say that it was just coming from
Sure.
those. I think that it was a good job of fueling, a good job of training, and
Yeah.
things like that probably did contribute. So that was the only real supplement that I took um, leading up to the race. Otherwise, well, I guess that's not true. So it's funny when you sign up for a race, how much more on top of taking care of yourself you get, at least for
Mm.
me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I took like elderberry like every day because I was like,
Oh, you didn't want to get sick and
I
stuff?
didn't want to
Yeah.
get sick. And I totally thought like it was on Wednesday, was the first day we were driving down to Utah from Montana where I live. And I had a sore throat. Like
Oh no. Oh
I was
God.
convinced I was getting a cold. And
Ugh.
somehow by the grace of God, like I did not get sick. I don't know how it happened, but I like Wednesday I thought for sure. I was like, this is bad. Like
Yeah, especially when you
um
have like children in school and they're just like such little disease bags. My little
so
one was
paranoid.
treating for strep. The other one had like a cough for like a million years. Like it's just
Yeah,
illness is just every other second in this house.
so
So yeah.
paranoid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um so I took elderberry and like a multivitamin. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like a person that's like super on top of taking multivitamins, but during this 100-mile training, I was like, multivitamin, elderberry, we're doing this. Um, I quit, so I like beer, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I basically quit drinking beer. Not that I don't drink like a lot. I enjoy a beer, like, maybe a couple times a night. Or sorry, a
Mm-hmm.
couple times a week,
I was
not a
like,
couple times
that's
a
a
night.
decent amount, Julie.
I said that wrong.
That's not a lot. Just a couple a day.
Yeah, no,
No.
I don't have a drinking problem.
Oh my
A couple
God.
times a week.
Got it.
But
Okay.
during training, I like just realized like, wow, I feel way better if I don't consume, even if I just don't drink one beer a night.
Oh, I can't. I
Or a couple,
legit can't drink anymore. We went to like an
yeah,
event last weekend, and I think I had 1.5 glasses of prosecco. First, number one, I was like
yeah,
wasted because I have like no
yeah,
tolerance anymore because I don't drink really that
yeah,
much. And I slept like crap and I was so hungover. Actually, it was even, when you drink early enough that like you start
yep.
to feel exhausted and hungover like later in the night, like all the other
Like at
parents were like,
9:30.
no, serious, like I can't keep up with these other parents. I mean, this is why I guess
Yeah.
my friends are all like runners or whatever. It's like literally Eric and I it was like 8:30. We were yawning and we were like sipping on tea. Everyone else was pounding like vodka sodas, like partying hard. I'm like, I can't party anymore. Like I just can't do
No.
this. I can't. Like I'm out. And we like held on until I think 9:30 and then we're like, we gotta go to bed, man. I can't take this anymore. It's so sad. But that's where
Oh,
we're
that's
at.
so funny.
Yay, 40s. Woohoo.
Oh, yeah. Serious. Yes. Yeah.
Anyways.
I'm 37. And so, yeah, I'm starting to like, yeah, just, and so now like one drink, like last night
Yeah.
I drank
Wrecks
half a
you.
beer. And
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't think I want to drink even a half a beer. Like,
I take like 3 sips and I'm like, ooh, nice buzz. Okay, I'm done.
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
totally.
God, so sad. But yeah.
So anyway, so that was another thing I did leading up.
Yeah.
It's not like taking a supplement or whatever,
Sure.
but I thought it was worth mentioning because I do think that it really helped me, and
Yeah.
it's definitely going to be something I continue to do less of,
Yeah.
drink less alcohol because I did really see a benefit to drinking less.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that was another thing that was like a decent change for me.
Do you normally take
Um,
any other supplements like omega-3s or vitamin D or anything else or no?
I take vitamin D very sporadically. I'm not the best at taking supplements. I live in a location where I need to be taking it probably 6
Yeah.
months out of the year, but it's very sporadic. We have it up in there, up in our little cupboard. And then I did just purchase a vegan omega-3 supplement. This is fairly new just because it like made me interested in it. But yeah, the omega-3 comes from like algae, because
Yeah,
right, the
algal
fish,
oil. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
the fish eat the algae, and that's where we get the omega-3s from.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I've taken that a couple times, and it's like a great way to get omega-3s, because you don't have like the burpy, like gross fish burps that come after the supplement. Um, so that's a newer thing for me, but I'll probably take
Mm.
that fairly, not regularly, but kind of
Yeah.
sporadically,
Yeah. Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
if it's been a while since I've eaten fish or something. So yeah, I think those are kind of the main things. I would say
Did
those
you?
are, and I
So you?
prioritize sleep
Oh,
too.
yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
So you guys road trip down. It sounds like. How long
hmm
was that drive?
Oh gosh.
I'm amazed
So
you did that with children. I'm so impressed. Wait,
yeah,
who watched your kids? Well, you guys, if
they came
Justin
with.
was out there.
Oh yeah. So the road trip, by the way, took 2 days. One day was like a full 12 hours, and the other day was like a
Wow.
4-ish hour. And that's like, drive time shouldn't have been that long. It was just like, that's the volume of time it took us with
Sure.
stops and whatnot.
Sure.
And the girls actually did really well. Tablets are amazing. And my youngest doesn't watch a tablet. So she had bouts of where she really struggled. But for like being a 21-month-old, she did amazing for being stuck in the car for that long. The motivating factor was, I did not want to skimp on the things that I brought. So like I have like I'm very particular about the pillows that I sleep on. I have chronic neck problems. And so it was like one of those things where it's like, I don't want to have to like cut down on my sleeping pillows that I need to sleep well.
Hey, it's
like,
important.
Honest, that is like one of the biggest motivators as to why we drove.
Relatable.
And like, I wanted to be able to bring all of the layers, all of the options, because I just didn't know what I would want or what I didn't want. So, and cost, it was cheaper for us to drive than pay for 4, or well, I guess it would have been three flights, rent a car, all the things.
Sure.
So, so anyway, we drove, and I do think that was a good decision. What was your other question in there about the drive? You had another one.
Oh my God.
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. Oh yeah, where did your kids go when because you said Justin was crewmaster?
Yeah. So my parents are so supportive. They come to a lot of our races.
Oh, nice.
They live in Minnesota, and so it's like a great way for us to, meet up and have a visit. So, and I rented this amazing Airbnb. It's in Hurricane, I don't know how you say it, Utah. And I should give them a shout out, Playcations or something. I don't know, but it was like an awesome Airbnb that it slept up to 24 people.
What?
And
24?
Yeah. And the price of it was like very reasonable. And so that was also one of my, like, it was something I wanted to do. My business paid for that Airbnb, and I was like, hey, I would love for you guys to come. I will pay for lodging. So my parents came, stayed with us, helped watch the kids, which was amazing.
Did your crew stay there too?
Yes, I had nice. I had 5 friends make the trip down, and I would feel so bad if I didn't mention the people that came. I had 5 friends come down. I could only have 4 pacers, so I had an additional. I technically had 2 extra pacers, because Justin could have jumped in to pace me. And my friend Morgan could have jumped in to pace me, but she was like, nope, I'm just coming for the fun of it. I'll be a backup pacer. So the 4 friends I did have come down are all very good, wonderful friends of mine. And if I could give a shout out to them,
go for it.
I would hands down not have finished. Like, I fully believe in this statement. I would not have finished had it not been for them. Like, they were such an encouragement. They helped me out tremendously, and just morally, physically, like, it was just like, they were just, I just have to say, and they made it so much more fun. Like, it's just, if you can get a crew of people to come with you that are just going to be like goofy and make the whole experience enjoyable. If that's your goal, right? Like if your goal is to go out there and win it, then you probably don't want to have a goofy crew. You want to
Yeah.
have you want to have like a
focused, serious
let's get
crew.
this done crew. But my goal was to go and have fun and enjoy it and finish and learn from it, right? So
Yeah.
but yeah. Yeah, so I had my friend Camille paced me 26 miles, and she was incredible. My friend Michaela took me into the night. That section I did with her was very difficult to navigate. The flagging on this course was not the best.
Mm.
And she was like a total champ. She helped lead multiple, like we had like a whole crew of us trying to navigate through this section. And she really like took the job of like navigating and did an amazing job. I had my friend Megan who paced me. There was a 10-mile section. Megan has horrible knees. She can't run very much and she prefers uphill. And this 10-mile stretch from mile 70 to 80 was, there was a massive hill climb in it. And then it was just like kind of flat gravel. And it was like, this like section is like built for you, Megan. So, so she was my pacer and she's like one of those people that goes to bed at like 5 p.m. and then will wake up like super early.
Uh-huh.
And I knew that her section was going to be like in the middle of the night. And I was like, Megan, you have to take a nap. And she's like, I will. And I'm going to put on my red lipstick. And I was like, okay. And she's like, that's what I did in college when I wanted to go out. And like, all I had to do was like put on red lipstick and then I could stay awake like super late. And
That's hilarious.
So Megan wore her red lipstick. She put red lipstick on me and like.
Oh, I think I saw a video of that actually on your Instagram. I was like, what is with the red lipstick? But
yeah,
well, now we know the story.
Yeah,
so awesome.
It was just like totally just to be like fun and like,
yeah,
we're out here in the middle of the night. So,
yeah.
And then my last pacer, Blair, she's a very dear friend of mine. She's actually the person I trained with for my very first 50 miler, which was 8 or 9 years ago now. And she's a nurse. She's like the most giving, caring person you could ever possibly have. And she definitely had the hardest time taking care of me, like, because I was just in a mess. Those last 20 miles.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't prepare for the sun to come up a second time, so I didn't have like another sun shirt or like a tank top or a t-shirt to put on. I just had like my warm, cold weather gear, and somehow Blair had a tank top and a sun shirt on, so she was like, here, have one of my shirts, like she and was like force feeding me food, like, here, eat a peanut butter pretzel, like, here's an energy chew, like, yeah, just like single so I just like have to shout out to my crew because they did amazing. And Justin was like so on top. Justin and Morgan both were like so on top of taking care of me at the aid stations that they could see me at. So yeah, if you can get a crew together for a 100-mile race, I highly recommend it, because like, to me, this was like a team effort. Like,
yeah,
it was like not just me who got me to the finish line. It was a bunch of other people. It's
kind of nuts though. And like, I mean, I don't know how many of your clients, like, you know, you're working with these long events, like sometimes they have like nobody else out there. I can't even imagine. Honestly.
I have a new level of respect for people. I have a handful of clients too that go and do this with zero support or maybe one other person.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm just like, that is a whole different level of hard, in my opinion, after experiencing this.
So. Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So big question. Are you going to do another 100? You're like, too soon. Or what do you have any desire to race in, like, you know, maybe this summer or fall? Are you thinking about anything else, or are you kind of your cup's full for a while?
I'm signed up for the Rut Trifecta in September.
What's that?
The Rut is a super fun mountain race event. It's a 3-day event.
I've heard of the Rut, but what's the trifecta? Is like doing every single one of the races?
Yeah, so Friday they have a vertical kilometer, which I've done twice.
Oh, wait, I have a client doing this. Never mind. Okay, I know what this is. Yes. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
You have a client doing the trifecta?
I think so. I
Sweet.
may have misspoke. I'm pretty sure. I know maybe there's a different race than I'm thinking of that there is a trifecta, but someone I know is doing like the 3-day series where it's like
Yeah.
1K, then yeah, it's probably that.
Yeah.
It's probably
It
that.
could be that. Yeah. So vertical kilometer. The second day on Saturday is a 28K with I think it's like roughly 8,000 feet of climbing, and it's technical climbing. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
single track. I've done the 28K and the vertical K before in the past, and then fate has just not allowed me to run the 50K. So so I haven't done the 50K in the past, but
Yeah.
so yeah, so then you do the 50K on Sunday, which is like 11,000 feet of climbing.
Ooh, oh my God.
So it's a decent amount of climbing for a 50K, and yeah, and the terrain is technical. Like you have like legit ridge lines. You have yeah, you have it's legit. It's not like a single track flowy
So you guys like in all
track.
these mountain races, I live in like, yes, there are mountains here, and like where I run though, it's like my 35K had 4,500 feet of climb. I'm like, that's so much climbing. I'm like, not compared to what you just said. It's like so relative. I'm really not used to living in like mountainous terrain. Like, we got the redwoods, and yes, there are
Yeah.
mountains, but like not like the mountains like you guys. Actually, I mean, you live in where you are in Montana. Is it like it's mountainous, right?
Yeah, I live in the northwest corner of Montana, like
Okay.
really close to Glacier National Park, so there's
Okay.
quite a bit of mountains around us.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But no, I grew up in Minnesota,
Sure.
like
Yeah,
flatlanders, sea
flat. Yeah.
level. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I totally get the variety, and it's all, and like Europeans look at us Americans and like laugh at our,
Yeah.
like they're like, oh, the rut, like you think that's hard, like like it's so relative.
Oh,
So
I know.
yeah,
It's pretty funny.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, anything else you want to share about your experience or any other learnings that you want to leave us with?
I know this was really fun to recap all of
It
this.
was really fun to
So
hear
thank
about
you.
it. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it was awesome, a really awesome kind of sequel to our other discussion, because our other discussion was kind of like the theory of sport of ultra marathon nutrition. And
Yeah,
this really was like how it plays out,
totally.
which is, I think, really fun, which is why I wanted to have you on. So thanks for spending some time with me again. And congrats again on your finish. Where can everyone find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, and thank you, Claire, for having me. I really appreciate you and your podcast and your Instagram and everything. So,
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, Instagram is the best place to get a hold of me. It's at ultra.running.nutrition is my handle. And then, of course, if you don't have Instagram, you can send me an email at fuelingultras@gmail.com. So, yeah, those are the two best places to reach out.
Yay! Well, have an amazing time recovering and just soaking up all of the awesomeness that it is of running your first 100. That's a huge accomplishment. I'm sure you're proud of yourself. I'm proud of you too. And yeah, wishing you all the best.
Oh, thank you, Claire. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, and that's our show for today. I hope you all enjoyed that one, and if you did, please make sure you hit follow or subscribe wherever you listen, and if you have a minute, I would be so grateful if you could also rate and review my show. If you're able to support the show financially, I do have a Patreon page, and I'd love to see you over there. Patreon members get some great perks, including free merch and a huge discount on my digital downloads and much more. Thank you so much for your support. Please feel free to email me, claire@eatforendurance.com, with any feedback, questions, topic requests, etc. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time.